Hi, good evening everybody. David McCoy, Ochimo Properties, Real Estate Matters. We've been doing several videos. We've done a number on frequently asked questions for commercial real estate. And we followed that up, still about commercial real estate, but just kind of specifically, a little more specifically for landlords and or sellers. And we've been working lately on frequently asked questions or topics for investors. And tonight I thought we'd talk a little bit about flips. I'm sure everybody, when I say flip, I'm sure probably almost everybody knows exactly what that means, but just so there's no misunderstanding, I mean flipping a house. And that's really a topic, it's too large to try to get into great detail here. I think down the road we may do several videos on house flipping and things that I have done and ways that you go about it. But I thought we'd give it just sort of a broad brush tonight. There are flipping a house can be pretty challenging. You have to, some of the biggest challenges you have when you're flipping a house is probably the first one is finding a house to work on, finding a house to flip. And that can be a pretty big hurdle. People will try all kinds of things trying to get it. A lot of people will try to get them at the foreclosure sales, or there can be lots of different ways that you do it. I think an awful lot of these guys, you probably get these if you own a house. You probably get these. They do direct mail, and they send out a ton of direct mail, and so that. First and foremost, you have to find a house. Then probably one of the second biggest hurdles for doing flips is getting financing to do the flip. It's because it's a little bit different. Banks, typical financing in banks, they don't really tend to like to offer loans for that purpose. It's the traditional home financing that you might get. They would not really allow that for a flip. So you have to get around. You have to figure out the way to do it, and there's all kinds of different strategies about that. If you have the money to do it yourself, which I know, it's a lot of money, that's probably the best possible way, because since you can't get sort of the traditional financing options at your banks or financial institutions, the alternatives that you get can be very expensive. I mean, the financing can be very expensive. And again, these we're just going to touch the surface on these today. I'm not going to go into great depth on all those things. But so many people have watched the shows on TV. I think HGTV and some of the other shows where they have, flip this house, or they have all these shows about house flipping, and those are great. I mean, it's great to see that. But when I've watched those shows, what I tend to see are a lot of big mistakes. And the reason I say that is there was one show I remember in particular. And these people, they had gotten a gentleman to be their financer, and I guess their arrangement with him is that he was going to finance the flip, and then they would split the profit when they were done. And this house was in Atlanta, and these people were working on the house, and they had big ideas, great big ideas, and they were trying I mean, they really did. They wanted to really have a beautiful house. And they really were trying to do everything at the finest finishes you can imagine in this house. But what they didn't do, and this is critical, this is really the most important thing I want you to know about this video tonight. They didn't stop to estimate what that house could sell for in that neighborhood when they were done. And they just sort of assumed that if it was super nice, that people would pay whatever they, really wanted them to pay because it was so nice. And that's not going to work. The single biggest thing you have to do, if you get a house in a particular neighborhood, you need to find out about that neighborhood. You need to find out what sells in that neighborhood or around that neighborhood. And you don't want to get too far away. I mean, it needs to be, probably within a half mile or a mile of that house to be able to get a good estimate. And so you can, if you really are fixing it up nicely, you can probably use a comparison of new construction. It depends, but you probably can. But you need to know what that house will probably sell for when you're done, because that is the most important thing to figure out. You have to, when you get that figured out, then you have to figure out your profit rate. And so, whatever that percentage might be, you put that in there, and then, you take out that profit, and what you have left is what you have available to both pay for that house and to make all improvements and your carrying cost. And you have to think about all those things. So your carrying costs, a lot of people don't think about those things, but depending upon how long you have that house, you're going to have to pay for utilities for it, and you're probably going to have to pay some of the real estate taxes on that house for while you own it, and you'll have to pay for any kind of maintenance on that house while it's in there. And so those are all things that have to be considered, and you also have to remember to add in the financing cost. So as I said, some of the options you have are quite expensive, and the financing could make or break, determine whether or not you're going to make a profit on that house. So you have to do that math, and that's one of the things. So when when you've done a few of these, you realize a lot of people will talk about, well, flippers, they just barely give you any money at all for your house, and that's not really fair. I mean, in a way it's true, but I think that when you actually do the math and you actually look at the houses, if the houses need a lot of work, then you're probably paying about what they need to be in order for them to sell. That's the way, it has been for me. The times that you buy the houses, the amount that you're paying seems low, but generally the houses that I get, and they're nice houses. When I go, I don't want to just buy a dump at all, not at all, but I honestly am looking for things that need work. That's one of the reasons that people are willing to sell it to you at a lower rate is it does need work. And many times there are a lot of different ways you might get houses, but I know one that I got a couple of years ago, sweet lady lived in there. It was a house, it was built in the 1930s, so it was about 90 years old. And it was kind of a cool house, but it had not really been updated ever since it was built. And so it needed a lot of work. It was a cute house, and it turned into a really cute house. It wasn't a bad house when we got there, but because of all of that, you know, it had some previous problems with flooding and water and all these kinds of things. And honestly, when you get in an older house, the older the house is, it kind of goes, you know, without saying, it's more likely to have had some of those issues. But so it needed a ton of work, and it turned out to be beautiful. But you know, you have to know that going in. And so her house, kind of getting back to that topic, her house had been on the market for more than a year, and it had failed 2 or 3 inspections on possible sales in the past. And so, you know, the thing that when I came along, at first she said absolutely not, but the thing about me is that I told them I might want to do an inspection, but it would not be contingent on the inspection. That I would not try to renegotiate the deal whatsoever. I might decide against it if there was something really big I hadn't noticed, but that she didn't have to worry about that. So, so I got that. But, you know, kind of getting back on topic here, you know, I think we will do, I haven't decided for sure, but I think down the road we may do a series of videos on flips. And if we do, you know, we'll take that when we come. I don't know if I'm gonna, if I get a house that I flip again, which I may do again here, we may just, you know, go over there and do the videos on that house while it's going through. But kind of getting back on topic, you know, that is the single biggest thing. Before you do anything, figure out what this house can sell for when you're done with it. Then make your budget accordingly. And you may have to decide, you may have to pick or choose some things to stay on budget. You know, you may get in the middle of it and think, man, this is over budget here. You know, what can I do? You know, where can I take money from another thing that I was going to do to make this work so that you stay on budget? Because it's kind of, I think it's fun flipping houses. I think it's really kind of cool, but you can lose your shirt. It can be a challenging thing, and in order to do it right, that's the single biggest thing that I think you should do. So anyway, I think that I'll wrap it up with that. We will, as I said, have more videos coming. If you like this video, I hope you will click like. If you think someone would benefit from this, if someone is thinking about flipping a house and, you know, they're talking about all this stuff, and, you know, maybe they would benefit if you shared it with them. And if you'd like to see these in the future, I hope you will click subscribe. So thanks very much for listening tonight. I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good evening. Good night.